What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined by Robert Cessna. Cease, word around the street is you celebrated a big milestone this week. Your 50 years at the Eagle, February 25th, which is now known as Robert Cessna Day in the great city of College Station, thanks to Mayor John Nichols. Cease, you're pretty humble. You don't love the spotlight, but just tell me what 50 years has meant to you now that you've had a little bit of time to celebrate and reflect on it.
The thing put on by my wife and my family along with the Eagle, I can't be thankful enough for the people who stopped by, and a lot of people sent emails, texts, just thinking about how all those people, we impact each other's lives. And I think it all goes back to that because it was a great celebration at the end. And I know you weren't there at my dinner that night. I think there was...
Hey, some of us still had to work.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. 6 of us lined up. It was Joe Comley who hired me along with Larry Bowen, Michael Peters, Brent Zwerneman, and Tim Schnetler, and who else am I forgetting? But my point being is, you weren't there, Travis wasn't there, Shireen wasn't there, Robert Primo wasn't there. So you talk about, that's just the people I worked with, and you think about how we all interacted with each other during my 50 years, and all the coaches that dropped by. I had about 4 people stop by that I never met before, and just said, but once again is, you can't do that. I can't do 50 years by myself. I do 50 years with all these high school coaches, all these college coaches, all these players you think about, and I laugh about how many names I misspelled, which is true, but you think about all those people. It doesn't happen without them. So what I like is, and once again, I credit my family, is you usually do that after someone dies, but luckily one day I'll just walk away from the office now, which is nice, but I had my celebration, and I feel we had our celebration.
Well, Cease, we're grateful for you.
Thanks, man.
You work harder than all of us. You enable us to do our jobs better and enjoy what we do. You make us laugh a lot, and I will always look fondly on my time getting to work with you. It's not over yet, thankfully.
There you go.
Hopefully we're going to make it to 51. You will, at least, hopefully. But
hopefully, by the time I get to 51, we've covered a few championship games. Let's hope for that.
Well, that's going to be what we're talking about on today's podcast because, look, things aren't going well for the A&M men's basketball team, the A&M baseball team. Let's start with basketball. 3-game losing streak, longest losing streak of the season. It's coming down to the wire of the regular season. SEC championships out the window for A&M. They're teetering on losing out on having a double bye in the SEC tournament. And, 2 weeks ago, the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee said A&M was a 2 seed, number 6 overall. A&M's going to have to fight hard to remain a top 4 seed probably down the stretch with games against Florida and Auburn on the horizon. Not to mention, they're going to have to play some good competition in Nashville at the conference tournament. Cease, what stood out to you about why A&M hasn't been able to come away and win these games the last 10 days?
What stood out to me is obviously I watched the games on TVs because I was covering or doing other things. But as my wife were sitting there watching it, it just seems like something's missing. It's one of those deals when things are going right, you get the offensive rebound, you score, you get the steal, what have you. But particularly against Mississippi State, to me, they looked in a hurry. They looked like in a hurry to screw up, where, in the past, they're so deliberate. Buzz's teams always have a purpose. They dominate the boards. They dominate inside. And they've just picked a wrong time, to me, not to be themselves. And it's easy to say, they'll snap back. But there's no guarantee on that because the league is so tough. After I watched the A&M game last night, I was mesmerized by Oklahoma and Kentucky. What a great game. Went down to the last play. These games go down to the last play. And while A&M made that great shot at Ole Miss, while A&M got out of Oklahoma with a victory, These last three games, they haven't been able to do that. So they're going to have to turn it around because there's got to be a little bit of doubt in that locker room right now because they're not getting the results they want. And the timing couldn't be worse in a way, but yeah, it could be the start of the NCAA tournament. So they still have 3 games and a tournament to get things rectified. And we know they've got great talent. They've got all the ingredients, but they're not doing it.
They're not. And it's interesting because, there's been points of the season where they've lost games, right? They lost the opener to UCF, and it was like, oh man, scoring drought. But then they went on a run. They lost to Oregon. Oregon was not a bad team. They're not among the elite this year, but it's a tournament style play. Things happen. They responded from that with 2 big wins in Vegas. They lose the back-to-back games against Alabama and Kentucky without Wade Taylor. They respond with some wins. They go on the road and choke against Texas in the second half. That was a embarrassing loss.
Really, too. Yeah.
It was really embarrassing, but they turn around and they win 5 games. So, A&M has been able to respond. It's just interesting how at this point they haven't. The Mississippi State game, it was just ugly. That was the worst game A&M has played all season. Everybody can agree with that. The Tennessee game, they were right there with the Volunteers. You just got to tip your cap to Tennessee. They just made the winning plays, and they're a top 10 team. Last night, Vanderbilt, they're playing to secure an NCAA tournament berth, and it just looked like Vanderbilt had a little more juice than A&M did. That was the feeling that I had. And so, A&M just has had some bad breaks. I don't think A&M is all of a sudden this horrendous team, but the road does not get any easier with number 3 and number 1 in a span of 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tall bill, or I don't know what I'm trying to say. You get what I'm trying to say. Well, it's a large order.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Tall order.
And once again, there's a little doubt because you mentioned all the reasons why A&M didn't have doubt because they've always bounced back. Well, now they need to bounce back. And most people thought you described it elitely because you watch Tennessee and you go, well, Tennessee's good. A&M played good. A&M didn't play great, but they didn't play bad. They played well enough to beat a top 5 team, but they didn't do it. So then you turn around and you lose at home to a Vanderbilt team that's not even close to a top 5. So now the ball is in A&M's court. They have to respond, and they've got to do it before the NCAA tournament.
Well, the good news for A&M is that Florida and Auburn are both beatable teams.
Yes.
Florida lost on Tuesday to Georgia. and they were getting smoked at one point. It was not close. And Auburn, they are playing probably their best basketball of the season right now. But Auburn, they lost to Florida. They lost to, I'm trying to remember who the other team they lost. They've lost 2 games so far in SEC play, I believe. Maybe it's just one. No, it's just one. They just lost to Florida.
It's just one. They're 2 games ahead of,
But,
But maybe they'll lose 2.
It'll be senior night. You got to look. The crowds at Reed Arena have been a little lackluster lately. There's no doubt about that. But with number 1 coming to town, it's senior night. It's your last chance to watch Wade Taylor play at A&M. You got to think the crowd's going to show up, and for whatever it is, A&M rises to the occasion in the big games, especially at home.
Well, everything you said again is correct, but sometimes you've got to step up without the crowd. I've been here forever. This is not a basketball town. The bottom line, in 50 years, it's not. You have to put the fans in the seats. They're not going to come on their own. That's just the way it is. This is not a basketball town. And you could say, well, there's good crowds earlier, but you do anything to give them I got to go to my son's ball game tonight. I need to go this. We got our church
the traffic's bad.
Traffic's bad. 6 o'clock
they
game's
got exam.
bad. 8 o'clock game's bad. You got to win. It's all up to the team, and everybody knows that. Buzz knows that, and the players know that. You're right. They're going to show up for Auburn, and they'll help them, and all they got to do is win the game, and then everybody's back in the boat.
Jake Weeks might disagree with us, but we'll save him some slander on this podcast.
He's from Auburn. At least he spent 8 years there, so I hope he's from Auburn.
Well, on the diamond, A&M baseball. Man, you wrote in your column this week, having the number one in front of your name, it carries a lot of weight, and A&M has felt that burden the last 2 games when they blew a 9th-inning lead to Cal Poly on Sunday, and then, look, they just didn't have it on Tuesday against Texas State. Texas State looked like they wanted to win that game like it was Game 3 of the College World Series Finals, and A&M just showed very little juice and emotion in what was a pretty disappointing performance, quite frankly.
Here's the deal. I covered 3 of their first 6 games, and I can honestly say baseball's the only game that I ever played. I love baseball. I'm baseball true and blue. Unfortunately, I've always had great baseball writers. I could never cover A&M or else I'd lose those writers you talk about. But I love baseball. I feel that's the sport I know. And unfortunately, they didn't look like this is not a number 1 team, the 3 games I saw. And or last year, I go, that team could win a national championship. Baseball is a great sport. A lot of it's, like Yogi Berra said, a lot of it's, 90% mental and 25% physical, whatever he said. He couldn't add it up. But a lot of it is mental. And A&M, we know, is all the parts. But they also have a new coach. They have a new pitching coach. They have new players. It's not – they have a lot of older players, but it's a different chemistry. And I'm not going to say they're not going to be good or not going to be bad. At this point, I don't know because – I go back to, and I was here in '89. That team started out number 11, and they rose to number 1. Man, when you start out at number 1 in any sport, it is so hard because you wear that, and it's an honor, but it's also a burden. And right now they have too many question marks. They're relievers. Oh my gosh, they're not hitting the ball. Sometimes they field the ball like you and I might be out there, and it's a long season. I've had so many questions. Just got done talking to an old baseball guy about what's wrong with A&M baseball. We love everybody. This town loves baseball. Everybody knows baseball.
You said this isn't a basketball town.
It is.
This is a baseball town.
And they just got to get it fixed out. They got lots of time, but every time you lose, things. It's the way it is. It's a mental game, and it's suddenly okay. They haven't fixed it yet. They played 7 games. Pretty soon they're going to play 10, whatever. I got a lot of confidence, and I've seen enough of Lavalette and Schott and all these guys play, and Prager could be in the minor leagues right now, getting ready for the majors. I mean, they've got great pitching. The new guy, the lefty,
Patton. He's been fantastic.
He's been fantastic. So once again, let's just wait and see what happens. It's a 60-game season. They've only played 7, but I don't like what I've seen in those 7.
Yeah, the hitting has been maybe the most surprising part. And look, the weather was horrible the first 2 weekends.
True.
And you can point to some of that, but Tuesday's game against Texas State, the weather was great. That was maybe the prettiest day we're going to have at the ballpark all season long. And A&M scored 3 runs on 6 or 7 hits.
Yep.
2 of those were solo home runs in the first inning. And you're playing midweek pitching against Texas State, and the Valentine kid was fantastic in relief of their starter, who recovered really well from those 2 first inning home runs, and
unfortunately,
it's just surprising to me that A&M is last right now in the league in batting average, which is the power has shown itself, right? They've hit some home runs. We all knew they were going to do that. But the lack of consistency at the plate, they've got a pretty high strikeout rate right now. They swing big, they miss big, right? Mm-hmm. But, they need guys to be able to barrel balls consistently. Jace Lavalette, he had a nice single up the middle in the bottom of the 9th inning. And, I mean, as much as you want him to hit home runs, you want him to be able to spray in some singles and doubles here and there. You don't need a big moonshot home run every time he's coming to the plate, because if he's he's aiming for that, he's probably going to strike out more than he gets on base.
And we've seen that before. He's projected to be the number 1 overall pick. So you talk about A&M having a number 1 on their back. Jace has a double number 1 on his back. And getting back what you said, Cal Poly had a couple pitchers come in that was lit up against UCLA last week, and they looked like Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale against A&M. But it's early. It's early, but there is concern. And luckily, they're going to a good tournament this weekend. They're going to play a couple games, and we need to see where they're at. They need to see where they're at. They need to build some confidence. They need to go out and get like 15 hits against a named school, and that way they'll feel a little better about life.
Well, and, the good thing about the weekend series is that the starting pitching has been fantastic. I know Lampkin's got like a 2.70 ERA, but he's been solid in both of his starts. You mentioned Patton. He went, just over 7 innings last weekend? He started the 8th and gave up a base runner, and then they pulled him.
Starting pitching is under 1. We're talking about college baseball.
Yeah.
I don't care who you play, and that's just unheard of.
Yeah, Prager's got a .00 ERA through 2 starts.
Yeah, not bad.
Which, to your point, the guy should probably be in spring training right now with the LA Angels.
Correct.
So, A&M's got a potential major leaguer as their Friday ace. The point remains, they've got to figure out the bullpen. They've got some good pieces. I know Freshcorn blew the save opportunity on Sunday, but he's looked pretty solid in his 3 outings so far. Moss, his stuff is really good. Moss has given up some base runners, but he's shown some poise and been able to get out of some jams. Rudis, kind of the same thing. It's unfortunate that Josh Stewart has been sidelined because that was a guy they were really going to lean on. And with the knee injury that he's got, we'll see how long it takes for him to recover because, it's a long season. They can't just trot these guys out just like Caden Sorrell with his hamstring. They know they can't trot these guys out and risk re-injury or further injury because this is a team that is built and has its eyes set on going to Omaha again and winning big. They're going to need these guys in June, and it's February.
They don't get to Omaha. It's a disappointing season, but the good news is they got enough wins. They're going to be home for regionals. They're going to be home for super regionals, and this is a baseball town. This is a tough place to come in and win. So once again, we'll see where they're at in about 20 more games.
Well, speaking of a team that's been hot through almost 20 games, the A&M softball team, man, they are just lighting it up. The sweep they had over Florida State was impressive. The grit they showed to come back in game 1 was phenomenal. And then, I don't know about you, Cease, to me it seemed like the way that Florida State lost that first game, it just completely sucked the life out of them in the second game, and A&M jumped all over it and built that 10-run lead.
Here's the deal about the A&M softball team. This is a softball town, too. A&M's playing like a team that wants to be number 1. They've come out, and what did they do last year? Well, they overused Emily Kennedy. Well, now they have pitchers, 3 pitchers that they can pitch and trust against quality competition. So suddenly, Emily Kennedy is still the queen, but she's got a court. This team lost they lost like 40-some home runs. They're not going to hit a lot of home runs, but that being said they went down to Florida State's home tournament. They won without their leading hitter, Coco Woolley, who was out there shortstop. So once again, what do we see? We see A&M men's basketball team struggle when Wade Taylor gets hurt or whatever. We see the baseball team struggling when they have somebody hurt. We're seeing A&M softball team have a great weekend. That's the difference. When you're on a roll, when you've got depth, when your players are stepping up, and you go, wow, why can't they do that in every sport? It just isn't the way it works. Right now, A&M softball is pushing all the right buttons. It's just the way life goes, and that's the way Diamond Sports is. They can do no wrong. Kramer Eshete, or whatever you pronounce it, her too, she is just a singles player, but she's playing like an MVP. She's making catches. She's throwing people out the plate. She's been like 450 at number 9. She takes walks. She takes 3-2 pitches that are 2 inches off the black, and she gets to walk. That's how zoned in she's in. Who watches a number 9 hitter, Bo? And she's hitting. I'm watching because I go, this girl is only going to throw at strikes, swinging strikes, and she takes. And they're just fun, and they're home for the weekend. They're fun, and we hope that A&M baseball gets the same way because it's been a fun couple of years in baseball, and hope it gets back. Right now, softball's enjoying that.
Yeah, you touched it with the pitching. We know in softball, in this day and age of softball, you've got to have an ace, number 1 dominant pitcher. But that's not enough. We've seen in A&M teams past. Think about the teams that had Mel Dumasic. Mm-hmm. She was incredible, but they didn't have anything beyond her at pitching, and it hindered A&M at times. What Grace Sparks did against Florida State was fantastic.
Unbelievable.
It was amazing. And
Lessentine.
In Lessentine, she had 19 strikeouts.
Hey, I help you with the name.
I know. I was like, Sydney, what's the last name?
Yeah, there you go.
2 Sydneys. Yeah. And the other Sydney, she had a pretty good outing too.
So pretty good deal there. But when things are rolling, and I give all the credit to Tricia Ford because she is a tough coach and a good coach. She's pretty humorous to be around. She's a ball coach, as they say, and she's also the pitching coach. And you would think she was going to get. She said she was going to get that pitching. Her first year, I'll never forget. She's great. So we're walking out, after one of the press conference, and I go, Tricia, you need a little more talent, don't you? She goes, working on it, Cease. Working on it, Cease. We'll get there. And so they're there.
They're getting there for sure. And hey, how about Mac Barbara? I mean, the way that she has been able to just insert her. You mentioned the production that A&M lost from people like Trinity Cannon and the name's escaping me.
The catcher and their outfielder for the transfer in. Holy cow! We switch sports. We'll think of them eventually.
But
Julia Contrell, the catcher. The outfielder, sorry, I've lost.
I don't know why I said Powell.
Lost my name. Yeah,
Powell's still on the team.
Powell's still on the team, third base.
But
good thing we cover sports. Woo, hey.
Hey, it's hard to remember names.
And high schools. We do high schools too. So
yeah, we're jack of all trades, master of few.
Master none for me. But yeah.
Point is, A&M lost a lot of power in their lineup, but the way that Barbara has been able to step in and be that powerful bat has been a huge thing for A&M early in the season.
And she went down to the first Florida tournament and only had 1 hit. But Maya Perez, who was a part-time player last year, she was the player of the week this past week. She has just stepped in, and Tricia said she is just night and day from last year, and she is. They brought her in as a big power hitter, and she hit the big 3-run homer in the Super Regionals against Texas. But other than that, she had a tough year, but she was a freshman. And I go, usually these stud freshmen, they come in, they're greatest freshmen in softball. That's just the way the sport is. But she looks night and day. She's having an all-conference start.
Well, and speaking of freshmen, A&M's got a couple youngsters out
2
there.
2 great ones.
And they've been really good so far.
Yeah, they got Dement. She's come in. She took over for shortstop when Pulley. They've got Frankie.
Yep.
What's Frankie's last name now? From Danbury. She bats 7th, 8th in the lineup. Rizal, I'll mispronounce her name too. But those 2 freshmen are playing like seniors, and that's how they're able to replace those people. But they'll be out there this weekend for Texas Tech's coming to town with the best pitcher in the country.
Hey,
you might want to get out and watch a couple games.
I know you're not going to be able to be out there, but, man, the pitching matchup of Kennedy and Kennedy is going to be a sight to see.
Folks, this girl's got $1 million deal to come from Stanford to Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a possible team to go to the College World Series. They have never advanced past regionals in their history. They hired Jerry Glasgow from ULala, who used to be the hitting coach here at A&M. Great coach. Jerry's a good guy. And it's going to be 2 good games on Saturday night and Sunday. A&M playing Texas Tech. That's a preview, a little bit of could be a super regional type deal or the College World Series. And you're seeing that in like the 4th weekend of the season.
worth the price of the admission.
Yeah, there you
In
go.
softball tickets, you can afford the price of admission.
And nice seats. You're real close to the action.
Well, Cease, we'll wrap it up with this indoor track meet this week in College Station, the SEC meet, of course. It's always a big deal when the SEC championships are here in town.
Here's the deal: is the last few years, track is not my forte. Everybody knows that, particularly Pat Henry, the A&M track coach. But the last few years, A&M just really has been number one, which is kind of unusual in men's or women's track, because no one has won more national championships than Pat. Lo and behold, this year, I forget which team is number one, but they're both right up there in the competing.
I think it's the men
competing for number one. So he's got a team. We knew when they opened up that Fasken indoor facility, you got to have facilities and NIL money. So now A&M as a track team that's worthy of possibly winning a national championship. So when you think about A&M's coming off a national championship in women's tennis, could do it again. You got track, you got softball, you got baseball, basketball still going on. Oh my gosh!
Not to mention golf.
Just go to the park or go to the stadium. Just go somewhere, and you're going to see a team that could win an SEC championship and a national championship.
Well, I think we've covered all of our bases today.
Dun-dun-dun! So I'm going to go to the locker room. Dun-dun-dun!
Thanks for tuning into this.
Maybe I won't be here for 51.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Miami Nation podcast. Be sure to check all of our coverage on A&M Sports at theeagle.com. We'll be back next week. See you then.